Thank you very much for your time to join Top Investors Talk again, Howard. And in June 2022, you told the world that it is time to turn aggressive again when the market is still selling off. So what is the temperature of the market now?
In June of 22, there's no place one can go to look for the answer to these questions. These are all a matter of my own perception. But it felt to me that in June of 22, what investors were saying is, look, there's inflation, and that's bad. Yes. To fight the inflation, perhaps the Fed will increase interest rates. That will produce a recession, and that's bad. So in other words, it's all bad. There's no possibility of good news. And when investors feel that way, they sell things too cheaply. That's when we want to participate. Our greatest goal is to buy things for less than they're worth. And to do that, you have to have sellers who are willing to sell things for less than they're worth. And usually that comes from panic on the other side. So I like to point out, and maybe it'll be helpful to your viewers, that in the real world, things tend to fluctuate between pretty good and not so hot. The pendulum swings like this. But in market psychology, it swings from flawless to hopeless. And when things become not so hot, but psychology goes to hopeless, that's a great time to buy. And now I think things are roughly in balance. I think investors are not panicked anymore. And so Oaktree is operating in its normal fashion, not highly aggressive, not highly defensive.
To depart the crowd if you want to be superior. But how?
How, I can't tell you. That's the key, because there is no technique or algorithm or formula or method that will produce superior performance. The greatest investors in the world couldn't write out a prescription that will permit the average investor to be superior. It's a matter of perception, experience, knowledge, emotional control, which not too many people have, and patience, as I mentioned. An accurate feel. It's feel. So the point is, there's no methodology. And that's why I can't give you suggestions which, if implemented, are sure to lead to success, because those suggestions don't exist.
Yes, but sometimes the consensus are right?
Yes, sometimes the consensus is right, which means you can improve upon that. The importance of being different is that sometimes the consensus is wrong, and if you can detect those times and move in the proper direction, you can do better than the consensus. That's this idea you mentioned, Ivan, of the importance of being different. And what are the main mistakes that the consensus makes? And they are emotional. When everybody else is jumping out a window, it's not easy to say, no, things aren't really that bad. People are overdoing it. They're panicking and selling. I'm going to buy. This is called contrarian. This is very beneficial if you can do it, but it's not easy.
I remember in 2020 or maybe 2021, you wrote a memo about the growth stocks and the value stocks. It's very impressive. We saw some very big names, very big tech names have experienced a very brutal sell-off today. So how do you see the value of these big names now?
Ivan, first of all, before I answer your question, it's important to me to tell your audience that I don't believe in forecasts, especially my own. Now, having said that, I'll answer your question. As far as I know, these leading tech stocks, we talk about the FANGs, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, but my perception is they did by far the best in the 2021 rally. I believe that these stocks, which did by far the best in the rally, were punished the most in the correction. Many of them were down 50 to 70%. Tech stocks in general, not necessarily those five. And now I think they're essentially fairly priced relative to everything else. But let's agree on one thing between the two of us. What matters is not what's going to happen in the next few months. And as your viewers and the people of Shanghai increasingly become investors. And I think it's important that I stress that what matters is the long term. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the next 3, 6, 12 months. But the question is, can you find stocks and companies that will be great for the long term? And can you invest in those companies and stay with those investments for 5, 10, 20 years? That's how you make money.
I totally agree with you, and we should pay more attention on the long term. But what other things really matter now?
Well, look, the market has changed over my 53 years in the sense that when I started, you had the feeling that what mostly made stocks go up and down was how the companies did. Today, investors are much more preoccupied by what we call the macro, which means economics, interest rates, inflation, currencies, government policies, international affairs, geopolitics. So macroeconomics and policy, that's one. And then number two, things have been greatly moved this year by geopolitics and world affairs, because geopolitics is not just standing still, and it is not just a benign influence or a stable influence. It's volatile and it's changing up and down. And of course, there are negative events occurring in geopolitical affairs.
So are we heading to recession?
Within the bounds of my limitations on forecasts, Ivan, I would say probably yes. As I just finished saying, the Fed is trying to weaken the economy to reduce inflation to a tolerable level without making it so weak that it falls into recession. And historically speaking, this has been very difficult. It hasn't worked most times. But again, I want to caution you and your audience. The important thing is not yes, no, in answer to your question. Yes, recession, no, inflation. The important question is, if there's a recession, how bad, how long? And my naive view tells me that it will not be too strong a recession and will not last too long, because especially because the dynamics of labor demand are so strong.
You know, Howard, you said that investing is a very interesting thing, since it is easy to be average just by some ETF, right? But very hard to be above average. So tell us, do you think, what are the 3 most important things if you want to be superior in this industry?
Well, one way that your audience can be different from most other investors and hope to achieve superiority is by being long-term oriented and patient. And most people have become very short-term oriented in the last, since I've been in this business. And they hold the things they hold for very short periods of time. Number 2, have reasonable expectations. Everybody thinks about, I'm gonna buy this stock and double my money. I'm gonna buy that stock and triple my money. If you can make 10% a year for 20 years, 1 renminbi will become 8 through the process we call compounding. That's a great accomplishment. And then I think the last thing is, you have to, there are people who go on shows like yours, and their approach seems to be to explain to people how easy it is to invest. My approach is to explain how hard it is. You either have to have reasonable, moderate investments like number 2, or if you want to be exceptional, you probably have to hire managers, and that's number 3. So I would say, I don't know, when you say, what are the 3 secrets? You might expect me to say, buy technology, or buy A shares, or invest in biotech. But that's not what I say. Long-term, reasonable expectations, hire what you hope are superior managers if you want to be above average.
We are running out of time, and let's talk something about China. Howard, you made your name in the past 53 years by investing something people call uninvestable. So What is your feeling when people say China is an uninvestable place?
Well, as usual, Ivan, your question is very appropriate, and I always enjoy answering your questions. And we always run out of time, I might add. But you're right. In 1988, Bruce Karsh and I moved into distressed debt. And people would say, what, are you crazy? You're going to invest in the securities of companies that are bankrupt? And so forth. And the answer is that the bargains are found on the pile of things that people don't know about. And we can sum that up with the word uninvestable. And in formulating your question, people have been saying that China is now uninvestable. And as you know, Oaktree and I and my colleagues have been interested in investing in China for almost 25 years. About 7 years ago, we began to invest in corporate loans, real assets, NPLs. We've made investing joint ventures with many institutions in China, had very good results. We have tended to do more every year. And now our investment total in China has reached 40 billion renminbi. And we're continuing to invest. Even within the recent year, we've made some of our biggest investments. So we're hopeful that China will regain a path of growth under the central leadership, that the economy will resume its path. And we're hopeful that the international tensions that are causing some of these attitudes toward Chinese securities, we're hoping those tensions will be resolved.
Oaktree's expertise is doing something people called uninvestable, which means that you require an excellent environment of rule of law. What is your experience in China? We know that you have some deals with China's property developer, which is in trouble now.
Well, you're right to highlight this. As a creditor, essentially, that means we're promised money. When you are a creditor, the borrower promises you interest and promises you your money back at some point in time. And that if they don't pay you the interest and your money back, then you have legal actions you can take to maximize your recovery. It is essential that the rule of law operate so that the creditor's rights can be enforced. And as long as I've been visiting China, I've been meeting with the leaders and stressing the need for the rule of law. And I have only received complete agreement from the leaders that I have spoken to. And I don't talk extensively about our actual investments that are underway, Ivan. But so far, I'm pleased to say that the right things are happening. And as far as we would say, the rule of law is being respected. And our position as a creditor who was promised money and has not been paid has been respected. And we are optimistic that we are on the right track and will continue to be.